Right now, somewhere in Hollywood, 15 sci-fi sequels are being quietly developed that most people have completely lost track of. We're talking franchises you assumed were dead, projects stuck in development limbo for over a decade, and one sequel built around a scene so disturbing that the studio almost pulled it from the original film. A woman, pregnant and desperate, injects herself with an alien compound. What she gives birth to is not a child. It is something else entirely. And here's the thing, that's not even the most shocking entry on this list. From a 20-year-old cult classic finally getting Keanu Reeves back in the trench coat, to a franchise that's generated over $30 billion in total revenue, these are 15 upcoming sci-fi sequels the world has somehow forgotten are actually happening. Number 15. Spaceballs, the new one. Here's the thing, after the first Spaceballs, Mel Brooks once said, publicly and with complete confidence, that he would never make a sequel to Spaceballs. His exact words were that the follow-up would be called Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2, and that was about as far as it was ever going to get. Then Amazon MGM showed up with a very large checkbook, and suddenly the sequel everybody was told would never happen is not only happening, but already finished filming. The original Spaceballs cost $22.7 million. It earned around $38 million domestically. ILM, George Lucas's own visual effects company, contributed effects work to the film. Before production, Lucas personally gave Brooks his blessing to parody the franchise. He did, however, draw one firm line: no Spaceballs merchandise. Lucas feared that parody action figures of Rick Moranis and John Candy would confuse consumers and cannibalize his own multi-billion-dollar toy empire. Brooks agreed. And then he turned that restriction into one of the film's greatest gags, directly mocking the very deal he had just signed. For the upcoming sequel, the film is directed by Josh Greenbaum and co-written by Gad alongside Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit. Mel Brooks returns as both Yogurt and President Scrooge. Bill Pullman reprises Lone Star. Daphne Zuniga is back as Princess Vespa. George Weiner returns as Colonel Sanders. And Bill Pullman's real-life son Louis Pullman plays Lone Star's offspring. Keke Palmer and Anthony Carrigan round out the new cast. Filming began in Sydney in September 2025 and wrapped by December. Number 14. Jurassic World Liberation. Every time a new Jurassic film arrives, someone always declares it unnecessary. This has been the defining pattern of the franchise for over 30 years, and at this point it has stopped being a paradox and started being something closer to a law of nature. And here's the interesting part. Every single Jurassic World installment has crossed $1 billion at the global box office. Every one except the most recent, which was released last year. Jurassic World Rebirth, released in July 2025, was built as a full reboot. It pulled in $870 million at the global box office. The previous sequel, The Road to Rebirth, was itself a study in franchise chaos. Universal initially approached David Leitch to direct, a choice that made sense on paper given his ability to combine action spectacle with a certain irreverent energy. But Leitch exited over creative differences before production began. Then, Gareth Edwards stepped in and the transition proved fortuitous. Edwards is a filmmaker who thinks instinctively in terms of scale and creature-driven dread, and those instincts suited the material far better than a pure action sensibility might have. He has described Rebirth as a love letter to Steven Spielberg, which is either a beautiful sentiment or a marketing strategy.
What's going on?
Jurassic World Liberation is currently rumored for a June 2028 release, with Edwards expected to return to direct, and Johansson, Bailey, and Ali all anticipated to reprise their roles. The title itself, Liberation, suggests a story that moves beyond simple survival and into something with a cleaner ideological spine. Number 13. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes sequel. In 2024, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes proved that one of Hollywood's oldest science fiction franchises still had life in it. The film jumped hundreds of years past the Caesar trilogy, introduced an entirely new protagonist in Noah, and grossed $397 million worldwide on a $160 million budget. Not a blockbuster by Marvel standards, but for a legacy franchise with no returning characters, no built-in audience from a previous cliffhanger, it was a very big thing. When the film opened, the critical reception was strong, and the ending left room for continuation. So, 20th Century Studios confirmed in late 2024 that a sequel was in development, with 2027 as a theoretical release window. Since then, everything went quiet. No director was announced, no casting calls went out, no production start date was set. For a film that would need extensive post-production work on CGI ape characters, the kind of visual effects pipeline that took Kingdom from an October 2022 production start to a May 2024 release, the math is concerning. Number 12, I Am Legend 2. Warner Brothers spent $150 million making I Am Legend in 2007, and $40 million of that budget went toward a single creative challenge: making New York City look empty. They shut down the Brooklyn Bridge for 6 consecutive nights. They deployed 250 crew members, 1,000 extras, 160 National Guard soldiers, several Humvees, 3 Stryker armored vehicles, a 110-foot Coast Guard cutter, and a fleet of emergency vehicles just to film one flashback scene. That scene alone cost $5 million. Weeds were imported from Florida and scattered across Fifth Avenue to make it look overgrown. Behind the scenes, director Francis Lawrence had to convince the studio the whole thing was even possible by shooting test footage with a handheld camcorder and digitally erasing signs of life. Will Smith said afterward that nobody would ever be allowed to shut down New York like that again. And here's the thing, the ending nearly destroyed the film's legacy.
It's working!
In the theatrical cut, Robert Neville sacrifices himself with a grenade. It's a heroic death, clean, satisfying, and completely wrong. This is because Richard Matheson's 1954 novel, which inspired the film, ends with the opposite message. Neville never realizes he is the monster. The alternate ending, which was shot but shelved, kept Neville alive and leaned into that idea. It sat buried on the DVD for years until audiences discovered it and declared it superior. Now the sequel is being built entirely around that alternate ending. Number 11, District 10. In 2009, a first-time director from South Africa made a science fiction film for $30 million that earned $211 million worldwide and received 4 Academy Award nominations. That director was Neil Blomkamp. That film was District 9. It was shot in Blomkamp's native Johannesburg, using a raw documentary-style approach that made audiences feel like they were watching a real news broadcast from a world where alien refugees had been forced into slum camps. The film was a direct allegory for apartheid. It didn't hide the metaphor, it weaponized it, and it ended on one of the most haunting cliffhangers in modern sci-fi history. Wikus van der Merwe, the bureaucrat who slowly transforms into one of the aliens he once oppressed, is last seen fully converted, sitting alone in a shack, crafting a small metal flower for his wife. The alien Christopher promises to return in 3 years with a cure. The screen goes black. 3 years passed, then 5, then 10, then 15. Blomkamp kept making movies. And here's the thing, in 2021, Blomkamp self-financed a low-budget horror film called Demonic. It earned a 14% score on Rotten Tomatoes. His career looked like it might be over. Then, that same year, he posted a single tweet confirming that the District 10 screenplay was finally underway. In 2022, Copley told reporters that multiple drafts had been written and filming could begin after Blomkamp finished his next project. That project turned out to be Gran Turismo, which performed modestly but didn't reignite his career. When asked directly about District 10 in 2023, Blomkamp gave a disarmingly honest answer. "I don't know if it's getting made or not. I don't know if I even want to make that right now. But at some point down the line, it'll probably get made." He has also said the sequel would be stripped down and bare bones, matching the originals. Scrappy production approach rather than inflating into blockbuster territory. Number 10. Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping. The Hunger Games franchise has grossed $3.3 billion worldwide across 5 films. It is the 21st highest-grossing film franchise in history. Catching Fire alone made $865 million and remains the single highest-grossing film Lionsgate has ever released. But by 2023, that same franchise felt like it was running on fumes. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes opened to just $44 million domestically, the lowest debut in the series by a significant margin. It finished at $337 million worldwide on a $100 million budget. Profitable, but nowhere near the cultural dominance the franchise once commanded. So when Lionsgate announced a sixth film, Sunrise on the Reaping, based on Suzanne Collins' newest novel set 24 years before Katniss Everdeen's story, the question was simple: does anyone still care? Lionsgate answered that question with the cast list. Joseph Zada leads as young Haymitch Abernathy. Jesse Plemons plays a younger version of Plutarch Heavensbee, the role originated by the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. Ralph Fiennes takes over as President Snow from the late Donald Sutherland, and publicly stated he felt the weight of standing alongside such a legacy. Glenn Close, Kieran Culkin, Elle Fanning, Maya Hawke, McKenna Grace, Billy Porter, Kelvin Harrison Jr., and then the confirmation that shook the fandom. Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson are in the film, reprising Katniss and Peeta. Francis Lawrence, who has directed every Hunger Games film since Catching Fire, returns to helm. Billy Ray, who wrote the original Hunger Games screenplay, returns to write the script. The budget sits at a reported $150 million, the largest in the franchise's history. Number 9. Constantine 2. In 2005, Warner Brothers spent $100 million on a film about a chain-smoking exorcist who could travel between Earth and Hell, based on a DC Comics character that most moviegoers had never heard of. They cast Keanu Reeves in a role originally written as a blonde British occultist. They surrounded him with Rachel Weisz, Tilda Swinton, Shia LaBeouf, and Peter Stormare. The film pulled in $76 million domestically, finishing at $231 million worldwide. On paper, that should have been the end of the story. But Constantine refused to die. On home video and streaming, it became something the original theatrical run never suggested: a cult classic. Peter Stormare's 10-minute performance as Lucifer became so iconic that it tops fan-ranked lists of best movie Satans by thousands of votes, beating Tim Curry in Legend and Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate. Reeves himself started publicly campaigning for a sequel, telling interviewers for years that he loved the role and wanted to return. In 2020, Stormare posted on Instagram that a sequel was in the works. Two years later, Warner Brothers officially confirmed development, with Reeves returning alongside original director Francis Lawrence and screenwriter Akiva Goldsman. J.J. Abrams signed on as producer. Number 8. The Matrix 5. The Matrix made $466 million in 1999 on a $63 million budget and fundamentally changed the way action movies were filmed, marketed, and discussed. Bullet time became a visual language. The red pill became a cultural metaphor. Warner Brothers fast-tracked two sequels, Reloaded and Revolutions, shooting them back-to-back for a combined budget of $300 million. The trilogy grossed $1.6 billion total. Then the Wachowskis walked away, for 18 years. And here's the thing. When Lana Wachowski finally returned with The Matrix Resurrections in 2021, she didn't make a sequel. She made a commentary on being forced to make one. The film was openly satirical about its own existence, with characters inside the story literally discussing why a new Matrix was being created. Most people assumed that was the definitive end. Warner Brothers disagreed. In April 2024, the studio announced that The Matrix 5 was officially in development. But not with the Wachowskis directing. Drew Goddard was hired to write, direct, and produce instead. Lana Wachowski would executive produce. Goddard called the franchise one that changed both cinema and his life. Number 7. Avatar 4. James Cameron said something in 2022 that almost nobody took seriously at the time. He said that if Avatar: The Way of Water failed at the box office, he would walk away from the entire franchise. He meant it. And then The Way of Water earned $2.32 billion and became the third highest grossing film in cinema history. But here is the part the internet forgot almost immediately. Cameron made the exact same threat all over again before Avatar: Fire and Ash. He said publicly that if the third film underperformed, Avatar 4 and 5 would not happen. He said he would write a book instead. that he was at peace with it. And then Fire and Ash crossed $1.5 billion worldwide, and once again the story moved on before most people had time to register that Avatar 4 is not just happening. It is already partially filmed. Yes, the truth is, 1/3 of Avatar 4 has already been shot already. The decision was made early in production to film scenes involving the younger cast members concurrently with Fire and Ash, specifically because the characters undergo a significant time jump in the fourth film, and Cameron did not want the child actors to visibly age between installments. The studio's playbook focused on two levers: shorter runtimes, targeting around 2 hours and 30 minutes instead of 3+, to allow more daily showtimes in theaters, and lower budgets, potentially using AI-assisted workflows for visual effects rendering to cut thousands of hours and millions of dollars from the CGI pipeline. Cameron has expressed openness to using generative AI for rendering tasks, but has called the idea of AI replacing creative art design, writing, or human performances horrifying. Number 6. Alien, Romulus sequel. In August 2024, a scene played out on movie screens that was so disturbing, the studio almost refused to put it in the film. A pregnant woman named Kay, desperate and injured aboard a collapsing space station, injects herself with a mutagenic alien compound to survive. Her pregnancy accelerates violently. She then gives birth to a pod-like cocoon that hatches into a creature the credits call the Offspring. Part human, part xenomorph, part engineer. It grows from a newborn into a 9-foot-tall, pale humanoid monstrosity in minutes. It feeds on its own mother, then it kills her. Director Fede Alvarez fought to keep this sequence in the film after 20th Century Studios executives told him it was too much. His response was blunt. He said that pushback was exactly how he knew he was on the right track, because he'd received the same reaction on Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. And here's the thing, that offspring was not CGI. It was played by Robert Bobratsky, a 7'7" former Romanian basketball player. During production, the creature effects team built a practical baby puppet for the birth scene and added digital enhancements only for the tail growth and ceiling crawling sequences. Actress Isabella Merced, who played Kay, described the birth scene before release as simply disgusting. Alien, Romulus cost a reported $80 million and grossed $350 million worldwide. In fact, a sequel is now confirmed with Rain and the android Andy set to return, heading toward a planet that Alvarez has hinted will be anything but safe. Number 5. Spider-Man, Beyond the Spider-Verse. In June 2023, Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse ended on one of the most devastating cliffhangers in animation history. Miles Morales is stranded on the wrong Earth. His friends think he's safe. He's not. Instead, a darker version of himself has become the Prowler. And suddenly, the screen cuts to black with the words, "To be continued." Everyone waited. And waited. Beyond the Spider-Verse was originally supposed to arrive in March 2024. It didn't. For over 2 years, nothing came out. And here's the thing. The first film, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, was produced on a budget of around $90 million and earned $384 million worldwide. The second one, Across the Spider-Verse, cost $100 million to make and earned $690 million globally. For every dollar invested in production, the franchise returned nearly $7 back. In fact, a Vulture report revealed that over 100 animators and artists quit the production of Across the Spider-Verse because they could no longer sustain the working conditions. Sources told the outlet that Phil Lord personally approved every scene in the film, which created enormous pressure as revisions were demanded on sequences that had already been signed off, leading to cascading backlogs across multiple departments. Some crew members spent over a year on the project and exited with little to show because their work had been replaced. The Sony executive VP acknowledged the claims were accurate and described it as simply how the process works. That response landed badly. Number 4. Blade Runner 2099. Ridley Scott's Blade Runner flopped when it opened in 1982. It made $42 million worldwide against a $28 million budget and was overshadowed at the box office. And then something happened that almost never happens. The film refused to disappear. Over the next 4 decades, it became one of the most studied, analyzed, and referenced science fiction films in history. When Denis Villeneuve made Blade Runner 2049 in 2017, history repeated itself. The sequel earned near-universal critical acclaim and grossed only $259 million against a $150 million production budget. A commercial disappointment, and another future cult classic. Both Blade Runner films share the same strange destiny. Brilliant on release, ignored at the box office, revered in retrospect. As for Blade Runner 2099, it's a limited series set 50 years after the events of 2049. It was greenlit by Amazon in September 2022. Michelle Yeoh leads the cast. Hunter Schafer co-stars. Ridley Scott executive produces. Silke Louisa serves as showrunner. The production spent an estimated $86 million filming in Prague, using the city's architecture to create neo-noir futurism with minimal digital augmentation. The series is currently in post-production and confirmed for a 2026 premiere on Prime Video. No exact date has been set. Number 3. Dune Part 3. Dune Part 2 grossed $714 million worldwide in 2024 and cemented Denis Villeneuve as the most important science fiction filmmaker working today. The film made Timothée Chalamet a global superstar and turned Zendaya into the emotional core of the sci-fi franchise. So, when Villeneuve confirmed he would adapt Dune Messiah as his final chapter, the stakes became something Hollywood almost never allows. Principal photography began on July 8, 2025, at Origo Film Studios in Budapest. Additional desert sequences were shot in Abu Dhabi's Liwa Desert. Unlike the first 2 films, which were shot entirely with IMAX-certified digital cameras and then printed onto 35mm film stock, Part 3 takes a hybrid approach, filming interiors on traditional 35mm and switching to IMAX digital cameras for desert sequences to preserve what Villeneuve called their brutality. The cast is staggering. Chalamet and Zendaya return alongside Florence Pugh, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson, and Anya Taylor-Joy in an expanded role as Aelia Atreides. Robert Pattinson joins as Scytale. Jason Momoa returns as Duncan Idaho. Dune Part 3 opens December 18, 2026, the same day as Avengers, Doomsday. Number 2. The Mandalorian and Grogu. Star Wars has not had a theatrical film since The Rise of Skywalker in 2019. That is 7 years without the franchise on the big screen. In that time, Disney has released series after series on Disney Plus to mixed results. Andor was critically acclaimed. The Acolyte was cancelled after 1 season. Ahsoka divided fans. The Book of Boba Fett underperformed expectations. But through all of it, one thing remained constant. The relationship between a quiet bounty hunter and a small green creature resonated with audiences in a way that nothing else in modern Star Wars has managed. The Mandalorian and Grogu is set for release on May 22, 2026, and the cast has been fantastic so far. Pedro Pascal returns as Din Djarin, with Sigourney Weaver joining the cast as Colonel Ward. Jeremy Allen White plays Rada the Hutt. Martin Scorsese appears as an Ardennian fry cook. Principal photography ran from summer through December 2024, shot entirely in California, which would make it the first Star Wars theatrical film filmed entirely in the state. Number 1. Avengers, Doomsday. Robert Downey Jr. stood at a podium at San Diego Comic-Con in July 2024 and told 80,000 screaming fans that he was coming back to Marvel. But not as Tony Stark, not as Iron Man. This time, as Victor Von Doom. The man who spent 15 years building the emotional center of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The audience did not know whether to cheer or be afraid. They did both simultaneously. And that is exactly the kind of response that sells $250 million in opening weekend tickets. Avengers Doomsday is scheduled for release on December 18, 2026, directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, the same duo responsible for Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. The Russos' last two Marvel films together earned a combined $4.8 billion at the global box office. Endgame alone crossed $2.79 billion, making it the second highest-grossing film in history at the time of its release. Bringing them back for Doomsday was not just a creative decision, it was a financial calculation. Filming began on March 26, 2025, with Marvel launching a live social media event to announce the cast. The film also brings back Haley Atwell as Agent Carter, a return nobody predicted. Filming has now wrapped, though Marvel and the Russo brothers are planning a significant round of additional photography to refine the cut. Now, the only question left is which of these 15 films will be the one people are still talking about a decade from now. Drop your answer in the comments. And if this video opened your eyes to even one sequel you didn't know was coming, subscribe to our channel. This is just the beginning.